Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Jonah Javad, a sports reporter at WFAA in Dallas, Texas.
And I am Dominic Miranda, covering sports here in Indianapolis for WTHR Channel 13. And we're talking about Friday's big matchup between the Indiana Fever and the Dallas Wings, Jonah.
And it could not be a bigger matchup for us here in Dallas because we get to see not only Caitlin Clark, but Caitlin Clark's first matchup against Paige Bueckers in the WNBA. We have been waiting for this for so long, for multiple years. We do know that they squared off in college, but never in the W, and that occurs on Friday night when these two teams go head to head at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. We were told this morning it is sold out. A lot of fans here in town are excited to see that game. But first, we want to hear from the young stars as well. I know on our end that we've sat down with Paige Bueckers a couple of times already, in the early going of this season, a one-on-one we did with her. And Dom, I understand that you sat down with Caitlin Clark before the season began as well.
100%. These are the two brightest young stars in the WNBA. This is going to be an awesome matchup for years to come. Just adding to the excitement of women's sports and women's basketball. And you're absolutely right. We did get a chance to sit down with Caitlin Clark one-on-one ahead of year 2 in the WNBA for her. This was before her injury. She was sidelined for 5 games, of course. But what she's looking forward in year 2, we get to hear from Paige and from Caitlin Clark.
We're going into year 2. It's kind of crazy that it's finally here, but now you finally had some time to reflect on year 1. And when you look back at your first experience in the WNBA, your first year with the Fever, what comes to mind? What kind of takeaways, your perspective of how year 1 went for you?
Yeah, I think it went really well. I think our goal as a team was to get back to the playoffs, and that's certainly what we did. And I think kind of took a step in the right direction. And then now moving into year 2, it's, from here on out, we're trying to win championships. That's our goal. And I think we added a lot of really good pieces to that puzzle. Obviously bringing Steph White in, she's tremendous, and you can just feel the energy and the vibes, and just taking time to put all that together. And that's not going to be perfect on game 1, but it'll be a process for us. But I think, having a year under my belt and understanding how the league works, the physicality of the league, the pace of the league, going from game to game, how the schedule works, having all of that under my belt and kind of knowing what to expect is going to be really helpful for me this year, and hopefully it can just get off running.
Going into last season, we saw the spotlight on women's sports, women's basketball. It was remarkable, merchandise sales, selling out Gamebridge, just the spotlight in general. And you've said before that you weren't alone in bringing this to the table, but were you aware of your role in it? Did you expect that and your impact that you brought to Indianapolis, across the nation, and to the WNBA?
Yeah, well, I think last year was a little bit interesting because, I was in college and you're turning the page really fast. So I didn't know exactly how it would translate. Obviously, I expected it to translate on some level. The fans and the excitement, I could feel it before we ever played a game here in Gamebridge. But, I didn't know we were going to have sellouts on the road. We were going to sell out every game at home here. I just really didn't know. And then to do all of those things was absolutely tremendous. So, you certainly feel the impact. And I think I feel it the most when you're, before the game signing autographs for young boys and young girls, and they're screaming, and it's like the best memory of their year, or they're celebrating a birthday, or they're with their friends. I think that's what kind of keeps it in perspective for myself. So, I certainly see the impact that I've had, and, hopefully that continues, but also our team, people are going to find new players that they love on our team, on other teams, and I think especially this year, you can already see our fans really rallying around this group, and, whether it's been players that have put on a Fever jersey before, or if it's the new ones we've brought in, they're really excited to support all of us.
All right, so basketball season's finally here. You're going into year 2. The Fever were extremely busy this offseason. What was your reaction to the free agency ads, the trades, and now this roster is so deep and talented? We've been talking about it during training camp. That's got to excite you.
Oh yeah, it's super exciting, and you got to give a lot of credit to Kelly and Amber. They did a great job constructing this roster, but also, thankful for the free agents that decided they wanted to come here. They didn't have to come here; they could have gone many other places, but they, bought into the belief of really being able to win championships here and having the fans being able to support them and playing in a city like Indianapolis, where basketball is the thing in the state of Indiana. It's what people love. So. Just really excited for everybody that we've added, from the vets, DB, Sid, Tosh, to, you know, acquiring Sophie in a trade, like whoever it is. You know, we're only bringing back 5 players, so in a way it's a little new for us returners too, but I think just taking time to put all of it together, I think we have a really, really talented roster. It's just, you know, coming together and everybody, you know, doing their role really, really well is what's going to make us successful.
With those moves come higher expectations, maybe from the outside. You know, Leah said at training camp, our expectations haven't changed. And so you have this talented roster. You're coming off a great end to last season, pushing the Sun to the brink in the playoffs. Just a lot of good vibes around this team. What most excites you for this upcoming season, individually as a second-year player, and then for the Indiana Fever, goals for this season?
Man, I think you know, as a team, obviously, we're trying to win championships now. Like, that's the goal. I think everybody believes in that. We have people on our team that have done that, and I think that's kind of what we were missing last year. We didn't even really have any playoff experience, you know. When we got there to Connecticut, like, not many people had really ever played in a playoff game. So, you know, adding that experience to our team, I think is going to be very valuable for us through the course of the season, but also when we reach the playoffs. I think for myself, you know, just having a year under my belt and knowing what to expect and continue to have fun playing basketball in front of these great fans. And, you know, as long as we win, I'm going to be happy. So just be the best leader I can be, now, knowing that I have a year under my belt. I know what to expect. You know, I'm the point guard, so people are going to be expecting a lot from me. I need to, you know, be there for my teammates, be an extension of Steph on the court, and just be a great leader and have a lot of fun doing it because, you know, the season goes fast, time flies, and, you know, I can't believe we're already starting year 2.
A lot more confidence. Beckers.
New wing star Paige Beckers.
Beckers, that is pretty.
The foundation of the future. Beckers' path to success beginning in suburban Minneapolis, where precocious Paige couldn't sit still.
Yeah, I was a tomboy growing up. I played all the sports. I loved playing at recess, at gym class. I loved soccer, baseball, football, basketball, of course. Even ran a little bit of track.
This photo has made the rounds a lot, right, during the Final Four. So what motivated 11-year-old Paige?
The Minnesota Lynx dynasty was like
3 seconds.
everything to me when I was young. You just saw them winning.
Title number 4 for the Minnesota Lynx dynasty.
It just created like a want to be a winner in me. Just wanting to be the best on the team, wanting to be the best in the state, wanting to ultimately be the best in the country.
Early on,
It was probably around 4th or 5th grade that I knew, like, this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
the course was set. The gym, her compass. Basketball, her true north.
Paige Beckers for 3.
Accolades have been plenty. Gatorade National Player of the Year, the first ever freshman
Taken away by Beckers.
named women's college basketball's MVP.
Wow.
Multiple injuries deferred her collegiate hoop dream, but undeterred,
The final page in the book of Beckers.
a coronation for a hoop queen in the making.
Number 12 for UConn.
It's crazy because it's so surreal, and like you walk around and somebody will be like, "What up, champ?" And it's like, yes, like okay, like we won, like we actually did it, and it's still like sometimes I gotta pinch myself.
Another pinch me moment.
The first pick in the 2025 WNBA draft presented by State Farm goes to
This time
the Dallas Wings.
2025 WNBA
for the Wings.
Draft. The Dallas Wings select Paige Beckers, University of Connecticut.
Alongside prodigious talent, Beckers brings influence, millions and millions of followers, a fashionista, and a branding powerhouse.
What's up? It's Paige Beckers, and I'm hyped to unveil this year's Loneliest Color by Sherwin-Williams.
She's getting acclimated quickly to North Texas. The food, sports, but it all takes a backseat in season
Beckers got it. Paige.
to her singular focus.
Anything that contributes to winning, that's what I want to do.
Good ball movement early going for Dallas.
We just all want to represent the city and make them proud, have a sense of pride when we put on that uniform.
We talked about that 11-year-old Paige's motivation. What about the number 1 draft pick in the WNBA? What's her motivation?
It's like now I'm living my childhood dream, but now it's what I do with it.
There's Paige. Pull-up jumper. Tough shot. Got it.
You want to work to be the greatest, but you can only work to be the greatest if you're great today. I think I've changed a lot in my approach of just seizing the day, being in the moment, being present, not looking towards the future and all the stuff that you want to accomplish, but you want to accomplish being your best self today.
Beckers for 3.
That was sweet.
I think the part of Paige Becker's time in Dallas that I've loved the most was her actually putting on a Cowboys hat during her introductory press conference at Dallas City Hall. You could tell this was a young woman who had really never experienced Texas at all. She put the hat on the wrong way, but she did end up figuring it out. And it seems like she's starting to figure out the WNBA as well. We noticed the other night that she was the quickest player to reach 200 points and 50 assists in WNBA career. So it is starting to piece together for the former UConn star. I don't think there was any doubt that was going to happen. I mean, we do live in a sports world where everybody wants immediate results. And if you don't drop 50 in your first game in the WNBA, you're a bust. So it has been nice to see kind of her develop, and she still has maybe down games, but all in all, she's really starting to live up to that billing, and it's excited to see her growth because Dom, the Wings they started out rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They started out 1-11. It was bad, and Paige missed a few of those games with concussion protocol injury, and so they've won 3 of their last 4. They're trending in the right direction, and I don't know how this season's going to end, but at least the trajectory certainly seems good for this team. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the Fever? Because you've already gone through a whole rookie season of a generational talent. How quickly can that team become a contender?
Well, yeah. Well, let's not forget the Fever started 1-8 last year before they really hit their stride post All-Star break. And I think, the timing of the WNBA draft, particularly for players like Caitlin Clark and for players like Paige Beckers who play in Final Fours and national championships, it's a real disadvantage for them having next to 0 time off before starting the WNBA draft, starting training camps, starting your professional career where you're playing against grown women. It's a more physical game. It's a faster game. It's a more skilled game. So you can't give them too hard of time, the Dallas Wings, because they remind me a lot of last year's Indiana Fever. They got the pieces, and Paige Beckers, she's the truth now. Okay, she's an absolute stud out there, and she's going to have a bright future. And I think she's scored 20 points or more in her last 3 of her last 4 games, something like that. It reminds me a lot of Caitlin Clark. She's a scorer, and people didn't really. They put her out of sight, out of mind when she got hurt at UConn. She comes in, sensation. She gets hurt. People forget. She reminded everybody just who she is a year ago in women's college basketball. And now she's setting the WNBA on fire. But as far as the Fever go, this season, last season, really young, exciting team. Surpassed expectations primarily in the second part of the season. Her and Aaliyah Boston really started to play well together. Kelsey Mitchell, absolutely awesome. Big 3 for the Fever. It was the exterior pieces of that team that needed just a little work, a little more experience. So coming into this season, that was the big thing. Adding championship experience, adding veteran leadership. Well, they did that. Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, DeWanna Bonner. Things still haven't gone great, though. Caitlin Clark's obviously had trouble with injuries. She injured her quad, made her miss about 5 games, and then now it's the groin. And groin injuries are nothing to sneeze at. That's something that can really linger on a team, and it just is fresh off waiving DeWanna Bonner. So things aren't great in Paradise right now. We're hoping this injury with Caitlin Clark isn't serious. The Fever are 7-7. They're not terrible. There's a lot of basketball to be played, but it hasn't been an outstanding start here in Indiana, especially with how the expectations really amplified coming into this season.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't always like to draw parallels between the W and the actual NBA just because they're different in a lot of ways. But in the way that superstars can elevate a team that was, largely not very good for a number of years, they can get you to a certain point. But then you're going to need those complementary pieces to really take you to the next level to win championships. So I think you're kind of seeing that with the Fever maybe now, and eventually it would be certainty that at some point they'll win a title. We're hoping that for the Wings as well. They've got an interesting group. This doesn't feel like a finished product at all in terms of roster construction. They did make a bunch of moves in the offseason, more splash moves than we're accustomed to seeing, because they knew they were getting Paige Beckers and that they could basically hit reset and get going. So we're slowly starting to see that come to fruition. I mean, this is still a team that's a work in progress, and I don't think expectations were super high for chasing a championship this year, but I would think maybe 2 years down the road, if they're not in the playoff hunt, then they need to take a serious look at what their roster construction looks like.
Right.
But speaking of roster construction, you mentioned Sophie Cunningham coming in and joining the Indiana Fever in the offseason. And so WNBA super fans probably know who she is. WNBA casuals probably didn't until like a week ago, when she tackled JC Sheldon on a drive, because Sheldon earlier in the game. Well, can you break down because you're in Indy, you're covering this game. What was your whole POV of that incident? Cunningham coming to to Caitlin Clark's defense, and sort of like Sophie Cunningham's blow up on the WNBA stage. Like, her Instagram follower count exploded. I mean, it's been crazy to see from afar, at least.
It was a wild situation, and she was already popular, Sophie Cunningham, just building a brand and having a successful career so far in Phoenix before she got here. But both on TikTok and Instagram, the followers went through the roof. And I think it's because the Indiana Fever were desperate for this type of like enforcer. Okay. So the role that we kind of thought Aaliyah Boston might play, but she's doing her own thing. It's not like someone you just come to a team and you're designated. Okay, if things go awry, you're the one that's going to be, cracking skulls over here or anything like that. That's not what we need. But this was brewing for a really long time. We were obviously in the heat of Pacers Thunder NBA Finals when this all went down, but definitely still followed it closely because it was such a national talking point. So you have a lot of storylines at play here. One of which is that the Indiana Fever essentially were the number one driver in dismantling the Connecticut Sun and any window they had to be competitive at all, taking their head coach and taking DeWanna Bonner, although she's not on the team anymore. So that certainly, I have to feel like the familiarity there had something to do with it. But this has been brewing not only this season, but last season as well. Like, you can feel a certain type of way about Caitlin Clark and how she handles herself on the floor. But one thing is for sure, she's a superstar and the star of the WNBA, and maybe of any professional basketball, man or woman league. Okay, there's no doubt about that. She is the one driving viewership. She is the one driving everything when it comes to the WNBA. You can disagree, you can agree, but that's what it is. And so you would think the league and perhaps the officiating, I'm not saying give her every call. That's not what I'm saying at all. But maybe cater to what is going on here. In so many words, right? She got beat up all of last season. And this wasn't, this was the straw that broke the camel's back here in this Sun game, because Stephanie White had come out more than once, this season, more than one game, at least 2 or 3 times, saying, look, the officiating needs to be better. The officiating needs to be better. She's getting beat up out there. Our team's not getting the respect it deserves, yada, yada, yada. And there was some merit to that. There's a lot of times that I don't necessarily agree with that, and players play, let the game dictate what's going on, not the officials. But there was some definite merit to that. So after she gets poked in the eye, and then Mabry just bumps her to the ground. I mean, it was an enhanced bump. Okay, I'm not going to call it a shove. I don't know exactly what the terminology would be, but it was a forceful bump to the ground that I believe warranted a flagrant 2 and an ejection. That was not the case. So once the referees, and this is what the Fever said post-game of that game too, once the referees make that decision, you've now put it in our hands to remedy the situation, which is what Sophie Cunningham ended up doing. I have zero problem with it. Clearly, the fan base has zero problem with it because her popularity just skyrocketed. But she said, a couple days later, it's our job to protect the star of the WNBA. And again, you can agree or disagree with that sentiment, but I certainly am happy that finally a teammate stepped up to the plate and said, this isn't cool. Imagine if you know, a young LeBron James was getting pushed around. You think his teammates would be pumped up about that? You think he would be pumped up about that? So it's just interesting how, finally it feels like we have an enforcer on the Indiana Fever, and she obviously gains popularity. But at the end of the day, the extracurricular side, you got to start winning basketball games. So that was kind of a breakdown, an elongated breakdown of that situation. But I got to say, I loved it personally.
I did too. And it's, again, I think it harkens back to you just sometimes in different sports leagues, you want to see something that you haven't seen before. That's why I think Caitlin Clark being, the player that she is, and the magnet that she is to the sport and the game, she was something that we hadn't seen before. Seeing that type of enforcer in a WNBA game to that extent is not really something we see a lot of, and to see that kind of physical application, because I think maybe to not a lot of people who watch the sport a lot, that they might see the sport as not physical and it's not, aggressive enough. That was, it was almost like watching, a goon in hockey, come to the defense of a goalie. You know what I mean? To that extent. And, to sports fans, you're like, oh, my brain can kind of, compare this to that. And, oh, that's cool, because there's some sort of physical application to the sport instead of just pass, dribble, shoot. So I thought that was kind of neat. Now, does it need to happen every game? Of course not. But it did show that there's passion, there's fire, that if it needs to come to that, it will come to that. Which I think the sport needs, and I think all sports need that to some degree, and we do see that in other leagues and other sports. So it's just funny because you think of an enforcer in hockey; those guys aren't seeing like their follower counts explode into like the millions. They're very low key. They're pretty much just known for that. So that's kind of part of maybe what she's known for in the social media sphere, and a bit on the basketball court, but then doing that as well, it's just kind of made it created the perfect. And also the fact that if you're defending Caitlin Clark, if you're in Caitlin Clark's orbit, period, you're going to get some followers, you're going to get some interest, you're going to get some attention, like we're talking about her right now. And doing something like that, especially, it was just it felt to me like the perfect storm to kind of blow her up and put her on the national stage, which is really cool because I covered Sophie Cunningham when she was a freshman in high school. I was a senior at Mizzou. I did the play-by-play games for Rockbridge High School pretty much that whole year. And I remember the first game, I'm like, they're starting this was a perennial contender in the state. I'm like, they're starting a freshman? And then she steps on the court and she's about as tall as everybody else except their center. And she was not the best shooter or the best handler at the time, but she was a really good defender. Diving for every time there was a loose ball, she was diving for it. She was drawing fouls. There were times where she played a bit over aggressive and was, reaching in and doing fouls that she shouldn't. But again, she was 14 years old, 15 years old. So that fire, that passion, that intensity, I saw it. I mean, how long ago is that? Almost 15 years ago. So it's been super cool for me because I got a chance to see this evolution, and then she went to Mizzou, my alma mater. So I've kind of witnessed the Sophie Cunningham progression, for the last 15 years, and then really the last week, it's kind of blown up to WNBA fans. But from personal perspective, it's been neat because you always get a kick out of that, right? Like you cover these kids in high school, you never, the vast majority of them don't really go on to do much athletically in their careers, and occasionally there's a few that do, and then for something like this to happen, it's neat. So but yeah, I just want to give you the floor. I think we got a couple minutes left here. Anything else you want to talk about? We can talk about the matchup, the game. I'm hoping Caitlin Clark plays because this has been built up and the hype is real, and I'm just hoping the basketball gods spare us on Friday night.
This happened when she missed, I want to say it was June 7th in Chicago, missed a game that was going to be played at the United Center. It still was played at the United Center. But not great when arenas are being filled, and Caitlin Clark's not playing. Obviously, we want her to play. We want her to be healthy, and I want to see this matchup. This matchup intrigues me far more than Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. Paige Beckers, Caitlin Clark. This is awesome, awesome stuff right here. What Paige Beckers is doing to start her career. She's a really easy player to like. By the way, I love her attitude. I love her vibe. I love the way she scores. I love everything about her. She seems like a coachable player. Like everything about her, big fan of. And I think the Wings are gonna, figure some things out here. Maybe towards the second half of this season, but certainly moving forward. There's no doubt in my mind that she's not going anywhere. And this should be a fun matchup. I hope Fever and Wings a lot moving forward. So obviously this changes the math if Caitlin Clark doesn't play. Because even when she's not hitting her threes, which she was 3 of 13 from the field last game on Tuesday, 0 of 6 from deep. Get this, she's 1 of 28 from the 3-point line in away games this year.
Wow.
I know she missed a bunch of times. That is a scary statistic right there. Now she's 22 of 50 at home, so she makes a bunch at home. But she's shooting only just 29% from 3. I'm not quite sure what the deal is. A quad is one thing, okay, and it feels like she had the necessary time to recover that injury. I am nervous about a groin injury and how severe this is because that can linger the entire season. And if she's not right, this team's not going to be right because even when she's not scoring, she facilitates at an exceptionally high level. Gets Aaliyah Boston going in the pick and roll game, hits Kelsey Mitchell when she needs to, pushes the pace with Kelsey Mitchell. That's what makes this team great, okay? Now, look, strength in numbers is great. Sydney Colson, Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, Kelsey Mitchell, they can all handle the ball. They can all, together by committee, handle a Caitlin Clark absence. But this is becoming a recurring thing here that we don't want to see continue because I think it's robbing us of a good matchup. It sounds like the Wings are figuring some things out right now. It sounds like Paige Beckers has scored 20 points, 3 of the last 4 or 4 in a row, something like that. It would be a fun matchup, and it would be at a big arena, and it would be a big crowd. So hopefully she plays hopefully this is just fruitless discussion by the time, the game rolls around, she's playing.
Yeah.
But it's not all been sunshine and roses here for the Fever to start the year. 7-7, I don't think is where they envisioned themselves. And Dewana Bonner off the roster is not what they had in mind. Okay. So, and Caitlin Clark battling a bunch of injuries. So I think they're still I think we need to give them a little more grace, right? You added Sophie Cunningham, you added Sydney Colson, you added Bonner, you added Natasha Howard, who's been great, by the way. But there's a lot of new, even though your core's in place, there's a lot of new and a new head coach, and it takes some time. That it's just the bottom line. It takes some time. We saw how good they were in the second half of next season. So I'm not worried about this team, but I'm monitoring the situation with the Indiana Fever for sure. But sounds like the Wings, look, they're 4-12, but figuring some things out here.
Fingers crossed. Friday night, American Airlines Center, Indiana Fever, Dallas Wings, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, sold out game in Dallas. We are so hyped. And we were glad to kind of do this breakdown for you. Dominic Miranda from WTHR in Indianapolis. Thank you so much, man. I'm Jonah Javad from WFAA. If you're watching this, enjoy the game. That's all you can do.